So, I got to play Transport Fever 3 early, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought of the game, what you can expect, and whether you should be excited for this game's release. So I was fortunate enough to be invited by Urban Games to fly all the way out to New York City to have my first hands-on with Transport Fever 3. So it wasn't just me who got invited out there. There was a bunch of press and a bunch of other content creators that also got invited. And I got to meet people like City Planner Plays and Squirrel, both guys I've watched play and stream for many, many years. And they were everything what I expected and a whole lot more. Both great guys, stand-up guys. I couldn't praise them any more than I am right now. So if you're both watching this, great to meet you. Appreciate you, and just telling the rest of the world right now, you're both cool. So we all got picked up from the hotel in the morning and we got transported to the event on a vintage New York trolley. The event was taking place at a restaurant which they hired out, and inside had a bunch of gaming stations where all of us were able to play the game. So this is where it now all starts. So I'm sitting on my gaming station ready to play. I've got City Planner Plays to the right of me. And we're ready, we are locked in, we are good to go. So before we can start, there was a little presentation explaining how the day is going to go. We had 2 sessions. The first session was playing Campaign 1 and Campaign 4. Campaign 1 was more set up like a tutorial. There's a lot of people there, this was their introduction to the series, so it was kind of like teaching them also how to play as well. Campaign 4 was introducing us to a few more mechanics. Then our second session, we then got to play a little bit of a sandbox game and do what we want and fully experience the game. So this is the moment now where I say, spoiler alert. I'll try not to spoil much of it because I don't think I'm in the position to do that because I don't want to be that guy. So I'll try and hide some of the nitty-gritty details, but I'll talk more about features and stuff as best as I can. But spoiler alert. So Campaign 1 was pretty much the tutorial, and this is where you kind of learn how to play the game. Most tutorials in games, it's a case of WASD, zoom in, out, you're learning the controls. This, while it was that, they kind of threw a little bit of a spin on it, and because the first campaign was Mardi Gras themed, you are in Louisiana, the mayor wants you to help save Mardi Gras so the event can continue. You had to zoom in and find the crocodiles. Now, it sounds crazy, but it was learning the mechanics of how you play a game, of course. Crocodiles, finding them was a little bit weird in Transport game, but when you realize you're in the deep south, you're in Louisiana, swamp area, it kind of makes sense. I thought it was quite a fun spin on just basic tutorials. Then you were led on to kind of like learning how to play the game, learning how to create transport lines and just getting the city all up and running. And then you were kind of introduced to the first ever water industry, which is me then having to create a boat line to get shrimp to feed the Mardi Gras festival. And my thoughts on that was, it worked really well. Now, I know there's going to be industries where you can kind of use helicopters to, grab stuff and whatnot. I didn't get to experience all that. We did have limited time playing this game, so I didn't get to go the full shebang. But it worked really well. I had a harbour, boat came out, collected, brought it all back, dropped it off. But it led me to this realization. I've always treated boats as a mid-game kind of introduction. And I don't start doing that until like the middle point, because there's a lot of industry and infrastructure you need leading up to boats, because you always have to transfer from one transport platform to another. Harbors don't, technically 9 times out of 10, happen to be on a coastal city you need to transport to. So that inland city needs the goods. So by that logic, it made me realize, hold on, boats in Transport Fever 3 can be a start game kind of infrastructure. Because they then introduce us to this new function of warehouses where you can then cross over goods to a warehouse, which is really easy for road vehicles to pick up and stuff like that. And you can just store mass goods. I thought that was really interesting, and it did make me think a little bit differently to boats. So that got me really, really excited. And that's only because there's now types of industry on water that you may or may not need from day one. So that realization, boats may not be mid-game no more, was quite interesting. Now, Campaign 4 is when I then started to realize this game actually is pretty cool. in a sense of they've made the campaign missions quite fun. The fourth campaign, you had to build a Woodstock festival and had to supply the campsite, transport the festival goers, get permission from the local authorities. I even had to transport sewage. I know, right? We're doing utilities in Transport Fever 3. Kind of wild. It was kind of wild, but I really enjoyed that. And that's when we was experiencing the first kind of ability where stuff demands something, and then it no longer demands something, which was quite tricky to get my head around initially because I've built up this large infrastructure, got it all planned out, feeding it, and then they changed the objective. You just made everything I just created redundant. Bit annoying, but, you know, I'm able to then redirect those vehicles to somewhere else, and it all worked out in the end. So that was pretty cool. And by this point, I'm starting to understand the game a little bit more. You might be thinking, oh, how much do you need to understand? Is not Transport Fever 3 just an extension of 2 and 1, just slightly improved and we got a few new features? No. While it does feel like the natural extension of these games, it has, yes, the same features and a whole lot more. I will agree on that point, but everything just feels different. For good and for bad. Now, this is where I'm going to give you some harsh opinions now. But I will emphasize these negative opinions I did initially feel, they slowly disappeared away the more I played it. Some still linger, and I don't know how I feel. But what I did play was a beta, an unfinished beta, and things can change. One of the things that took me a while to get used to was just building roads and rail lines just in general. I mean, how different could that be? Well, right now, you build, say, for example, a rail line. You build it, and then you take your button off the click, and then you have to confirm or deny, and it tells you how much it is before you commit to that build. Gives you a few moments to kind of like tweak it a little bit, maybe change a bridge or a section to underground, and then you're good to go. Whereas in Transport Fever 3, you build your rail. As soon as you let go of your click, it's built, confirmed, done. And you're thinking, whoa, what just happened right there? I just spent a load of money. I wasn't ready. You kind of have to switch your thought process, whereas the emphasis, for me at least, in number 2, is I build it, and the emphasis to then adjust it before I can commit to it is there. Now the emphasis is on you adjust and commit to it before you commit to it and take your finger off and click. That took some getting used to, and I found myself a few times accidentally building stuff really quickly. I did get over it initially once, you know, I kind of got into the rhythm, but that took me a little bit of getting used to. Now, apparently one of the developers did say that they're 50-50 on whether they should keep it or revert back to the confirmation at the very end. But once you play it, I then stopped noticing it. So maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe. Another thing I found a bit tricky, and it's something that I still struggle to with even now thinking back to it, is the amount of UI change that they've done. Not that they've made things more difficult, although you could argue it has made it more difficult, because that's probably my criticism, is that a lot of stuff is now a little bit more difficult to find and a little bit more difficult to read just because I'm used to number 2. For example, a lot of the stuff has now been separated because there's more features and more stuff in the game. I don't think it's as easy for them to kind of keep it with all in the same UI buttons and submenus, because it would get quite overwhelming. So now you'll find roads and buildings are now all separated. Like you'll go to click onto trains, and the tracks and the buildings are in separate UIs of separate submenus of that UI. So it's a case of, and I find this doing it all the time, I go to build something. Oh wait, it's not in there. No, it's not in there. Wait, hold on, where is it? Oh, no, it's there. I found myself doing that quite a lot, which takes a lot of getting used to. Being used to number 2 and then jumping to number 3, it's a bigger step than from 1 to 2. So, you know, I don't know how that's going to go, but I get it. There is a lot of new features, and if they were all within the same Transport Fever 2 menus, you'll be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So I get that. But having the buildings separate to the roads, I struggled with that one. I did struggle with that one. Now, the important question is, how did it run? Because since City Skylines 2, any game release now, when you're seeing delays or it coming out or beta footage, the big question is it a City Skylines 2? And if you don't know what I mean, and you may have been living under a rock, that release was a bit rough. How does Transport Fever 3 feel? Well, I am happy to announce I did not experience any issues. Didn't have any frame rate issues. I didn't actually experience any lag. And I do need to emphasize this game is in beta, so you expect there to be some issues. I did have some issues, and it was just a few of the goals in the campaign missions weren't completing, even though I've completed them. But there were a few minor hiccups, and it wasn't the game itself. Now, I did ask what the system was and the monitor I was playing on. Turns out I was actually playing on a 2K monitor, and I did ask what the PCs were, but I actually can't remember what they said. But there was 30 of them. I don't expect they went all out on 30 systems just that one event. So I'm going to assume they were pretty high-end computers. 2K monitors, game looked great. Didn't experience any frame rate of game. No lags, no issues, nothing. Apart from a few goals in campaign that didn't complete when I completed them. So that's quite promising, right? I've got to take that as a win. Now, how did the game look? Looked really good. I mean, I couldn't say anything bad about it. There was a lot of detail, a lot more animations and stuff from the buildings and your vehicles load and unload. There was more emphasis on you can actually now watch them actually work. I mean, I know you could do it before, but it felt more satisfying. Now, because there's more detail, the terrain is a lot better. And this is my next talking point right now. The terrain in the game was actually unreal. I did, and I will talk about my second session a little bit more in depth a little bit later, but in my little second session free game that I built, I chose to go against what everyone else was doing, and everyone was doing like a temperate map. I chose to go desert just to be a bit different. I know, cool like that, right? And the difference in elevation of the terrain was a bit wild. The terrain levels are like a bit more on steroids. There's higher highs, there's lower lows. It's more varied is the best I can put it. Which, because it was more varied, it took me longer to plan out roads and train lines because of the huge difference in elevation. And I think that's because the engine that they've now kind of got and the graphic style and the art they've got, they have more variation in the terrain textures. So I think they want to show it off a bit more, and there is more variation, which does add a lot more challenge. And a part of me likes it, a part of me doesn't. If I had a perfect world, I'll have one mountain really far away and everything else flat. But, you know, that's not a real world. So it was quite a cool to have that little bit of challenge. So after our first little session there, they then threw us into a helicopter. Not literally, but they took us to an airport. We got to fly a helicopter, well, sit in a helicopter and fly around New York and see some of the landmarks. They put Transport Fever 3 on the helicopter. And it was actually a helicopter we could use in the game, which I thought was a nice little touch. Flew around, seen some cool stuff, seen the Statue of Liberty. May have been slightly scared the whole time, but, you know, we don't talk about that. And then we came back for our second session where I got to play a free game, and there was one reason why I was really excited for this. Because I only played the 2 campaigns, or the 2 missions within the campaign, you were limited to what you had available. You only had available in the menus what you needed for the mission. Free game, everything unlocked. The world is my oyster. So like I mentioned previously, I chose like a deserty map. I left everything kind of like default, like, you know, medium towns, medium terrain, medium water, everything just in the middle. I wanted to see what the middle point was before doing any experiments. It turns out I didn't get to do any experiments because I was so locked in to this, I completely forgot what I was doing. I forgot about my surroundings. So created a desert map, spawned in, looking around as you do, trying to figure out what cities want what. And then that's when I was realizing how different the game actually is, the demands of the towns, the industries. And then I started to realize, holy moly, this is not an extension of Transport Fever Series 1 or 2. This is a whole leap forward. This almost feels like a new game. It's the same, but different. So I initially started then by feeding a town with some food. It required food, but for me to deliver it the food it required, I had to provide that industry with either grain or livestock. Yes, 2 different types of raw products. And that was my next kind of conundrum, is just trying to understand what needed what. wasn't confusing. It was just, it's a whole new game. There's new industries. It's exciting. What needs what? And it was pretty cool. I created 2 truck routes, delivering the grain and the livestock, which actually came from the same building now thinking about it, to where we produced the food. And then that itself then produced 2 types of goods that we could then deliver. So it produced meat and it produced vegetables, but the town that I had only really wanted the meat. So I then transported the meat to the town. And this is where I then started to realize how different the demands in the game are. It feels like supply and demand. You deliver too much to the industry, it stops producing. You demand more from the industry, the town doesn't want it. It kind of felt like that. Even though it's not set up like that, that's kind of like how it felt. Trying to balance the industry was very difficult for me, I found. Normally in Transport Fever 2, you feed an industry with the raw product, it outputs what you feed it, and then you deliver it to the city. Obviously, the factory grows the more the demand from the city is. I understand that's how Transport Fever 2 works, where in 3, felt very different. Now, I don't know whether this is because there is a separate kind of side to these industries where there's now boosts, where the industry that I was working with, it needed 2 type of boosts to increase production a bit more and to kind of level it up in that sense, to produce more rather than just heavily relying on city demand. And that was I had to transport workers from a town to the industry to give it that worker boost. And it also required kind of I forgot what it was actually called, but it was like a seed almost, not a seed, like a fertilizer to increase production there. And I got that from doing something with the oil industry. And that was a bit more difficult to get delivered because it was further away on the map. But there's a whole new level. It's not just a case of you need more demand from the cities. There's also boosts involved. So I found myself I found it quite difficult to make money because there was these extra layers that I weren't used to, which kind of hindered my growth. Whereas normally you would deliver a bunch of grain to a food factory, then deliver the food to the city. Now I was delivering the grain to the food factory, delivering the food to the city. The city demands what it demands. The food factory can only produce X amount because now there's a boost involved that I need to get people coming over here. But it's difficult to get people over to the factory initially because my factory was a little bit too close to the city, which meant delivering the small amount of people that it required didn't make much money. So what I was losing on that line was taking away from the small amount of profits I was making on the food line to the city. There was a whole lot of management, okay? It was, if you like micromanagement, you're going to love this, but you have to really think out of the box. And just speaking to the developers, they kind of make sense of it. It's they don't see the game too much as you make money, because money at a certain point becomes irrelevant in the game. It's all about the micromanagement, getting stuff from point A to point B, creating the perfect infrastructure, the transport systems. And I thought about it. Yeah, at what point do I stop thinking about money in the game? And then it probably hit me. Maybe an hour after playing, once I got my first route set up and I'm making money, I stopped thinking about making money. And that's true. So maybe the emphasis on making money a little bit more difficult added the extra challenge. But I worry that that might put a lot of people off initially, because it did feel a little bit more difficult to make money from the start. And that then throws in this other conundrum. Depots. Yes. Depots. Maintaining vehicles is more of a thing in this series than any other of the 2 games. Now, vehicles you just pay out, they have to return to the depot to be maintained, which if you don't have a depot on a line where your vehicles cross over, like for example, vehicles are okay, like road vehicles, trains. If you don't have a depot along your train's line or near to where it can go, you need to build the infrastructure so all train lines are able to somehow get to a depot for it to be maintained. And if you don't do that, you find yourself building 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 depots just to satisfy your infrastructure. They cost a lot of money. So you're going to find yourself paying out quite a bit. Does it add realism? Yes. Does it add the extra challenge? Yes. Do I like it? I don't know. I don't know. Now, something I never really got an answer on, and I really wish I did. I built a station from one city, built a station in another city, and then I wanted to create 2 runs leading up to it. One was going to be in the middle, cargo run. One on the outer was passenger. And I did that, got it all set up, built my double slips. Works really well, actually. I'm not even going to lie. It worked really, really well. But I put down my signals. There was no waypoints in the game. I didn't really get an answer on that. Something I forgot to ask. So I don't know whether that was a feature missing or, again, like, because the game's in beta, it wasn't in yet. I'm not too sure. So I wasn't able to direct what train line I wanted on what rail. It just did it. Couldn't select the signal. There was no waypoints to add in. I wasn't too sure. I tried everything within the UI to figure out where I would have to kind of select the signal. Couldn't figure it out. If it was in the game, it wasn't natural to me. So I'm not too sure on that one. But it's something that I expect to be able to do. I just wasn't able to do it. But I still got to emphasize, game was in beta. Not all features were available. And I'm hoping that was one of them. So what were my final thoughts on the game? I think it looks really good and it played really well. And for that reason, very positive. The initial UI is a bit confusing. It will take some getting used to for my part anyway. Just figuring out where stuff is and how and where they've now moved everything. But that's like any game. You play any game long enough, you get used to it. But because I'm used to the previous iteration, I'm always going to be thinking of that. But it's something that we will get over. Campaigns are really themed great. So looking forward to playing all of them. And how the terrain now generates in these games is amazing. So there is more emphasis on variation, which does lead to a bit more planning, which I kind of like. No longer it's as easy as build a tunnel. No, because that tunnel could go on for quite some time. So would I really say there's much negativity surrounding it? Not really. It's just us being old dogs not wanting to learn new tricks might be its biggest hindrance. But it looked really good. I do worry about how difficult it is to make cash. But like any game, once you learn the mechanics, the basics, and how it really works, I'm sure then you will realize, actually, it's quite easy to make money. You were just really terrible at the start. How was the traffic management, the TMPE? Actually pretty good. I did get to experience turning traffic lights off, and that worked really, really well. I bent some roads in to create like a really smooth cornering junction away from the actual junction. That worked really well. Doing the line connections to give like this lane turns this way and then this lane turns that way worked really well. The fact that I can't say anything negative about it just shows you how good it actually was. It's what you expect. It was like the mod in City Skylines 2 and 1. It was like the mod, but a base game feature. That's all I can say. It worked. I mean, it's what you expect, but it just worked. Like, it made sense. Now, you're probably thinking, is it something that you should be excited for? Yes. Yes, you should. If you've liked Transport Fever 1 and 2, and I would say yes, get excited for number 3, but I will emphasize, expect it to be different slightly in some areas. It's a bigger step forward because of the new features that we've got. Whereas number 2 felt like a natural progression from number 1. This one is a bit more than that. It does change a few things like the economy, the demand, the supply, the industries, how you store the goods. I expect it to be different, but I feel like it was needed. I don't think they could have just made an improvement on 2 to 3 and then gone, here you go. There is some new stuff and it takes some getting used to, but it's for the good of the game. So my closing thoughts are, I'm excited. You should be excited. I'm very positive for it. My only downsides are just a little bit difficult to navigate some of the menus and just the changes that they've made that I'm used to in number 2. But that, I think, might reflect more on me being an old dog refusing to learn new tricks than anything else. The negatives made sense of why they would have changed it, but I'm just too stubborn. I will never change. So overall, very positive, very excited, and you should be too. I am not saying this because they invited me out here. They've not paid me to say this or anything like that. This is just my thoughts. get excited, be excited. It should be a good game. And it should be playable on day one. At least it should be that. All right, thanks for watching. And see you all soon. Bye. All right, apologies for the jump scare at the very end. It's 5:30 in the morning while I edit this video, but I realized while editing it, I forgot to show you. I got a swag bag from Transport Fever Free, and I thought you might be interested to see what we all got. We got a t-shirt. Hold on. We got a t-shirt, which there was only limited sizes available, and all I could grab was a medium. I'm not a medium. Not even a large, but we don't talk about that, okay? We don't talk about that. So Transport Fever Free, looking pretty good. Loving it right now. We got a nice little, let me take this out, little flask. Is it like a thermal flask with Transport Fever Free on? It's looking nice. I'll definitely use that. That's going to come in really handy while making videos. I got a Transport Fever Free pen. So when I write down my video ideas, I can do it Transport Fever Free styly. We got like a lanyard thing holder. You get it? I don't know what they're called. Is the lanyard the card, or is that also included in the... Anyway, I got a Transport Fever Free card. There is a QR card on the back, a QR code. There we go. But I'm not going to show you that just in case it leads to somewhere you're not meant to go. I got a Transport Fever Free keychain with a truck. If it will show, get my face out of the way. Very nice, very nice. And we got some glorious Transport Fever Free chocolates. Now, I don't know how good they are. The company is Swiss, so I'm hoping it's some Swiss chocolate. Or it could be American chocolate. And I'm not a fan of the American chocolate. So, nice little swag bag. Thank you very much. Bye again.